Next, to verify whether the patient actually has coverage for their insurance is the eligibility call. Now, the eligibility column is always going to be there whether you purchase this extra feature through Advanced MD or not. In any case, once it's been checked, you're going to receive different colored indicators here. If you see a green check mark, it means that the patient is eligible for the benefits from the carrier at the time that the coverage was checked. Now, how do you know? Well, again, if I got a green check mark here, if I hover over it, that green check mark will give me the last check date. Of course, you can see right here that there's nothing in the box and it says the insurance eligibility is not checked. See that little pop-up there? So if you got a green check mark, hey, you're great, you're good to go. At least when you hover over it, if it was checked a year ago, it may be due for another check on their insurance coverage for today, just to make sure that they're covered before you see the patient. Next is the red circle with a red line through it. If you get this, then that means the patient insurance coverage is unconfirmed. Doesn't mean that they're not covered. It could mean that they're not covered. However, there may be system errors in Advanced MD or through their clearinghouse Relay Health or even at the carrier level. It's just unconfirmed. So you may want to call the insurance carrier if you get a system error back from Advanced MD saying it's unconfirmed to verify that the patient is covered by their insurance. Now, if it is unconfirmed, you're going to get a lot of pop-up memos every time you open up the patient demographics warning you that the patient is unconfirmed. Now, if you have confirmed it and you don't want to keep getting those pop-ups over and over again, then you can bypass that. And again, you want to watch a training video on the patient demographics on the insurance tab because it'll show you how to bypass that. The reason why I mention it now is because when you actually bypass an unconfirmed coverage, you're going to get this icon, a little blue arrow. That blue arrow means that the eligibility was bypassed. Now for me, when I bypass unconfirmed insurance coverage, I'm going to have a note that says I actually called and confirmed it. Because I don't want to bypass something that's unconfirmed. I still want those pop-up memos saying, look, you better confirm this before you see the patient. The other icon is a little yellow yield sign. It means that the request didn't go to Relay Health due to missing information. So for example, if it didn't go and I got a little yellow icon here for the accordion insurance, if I double click on the carrier code here, again, it'll pull me up to Buck Rogers Insurance tab, where I can come in here and go, oops, I'm missing the subscriber ID. Maybe it's completely missing the subscriber ID and I just need to type in the ID. And then when I'm finished, be sure to save my work and then go ahead and demand and check eligibility here. Remember, there's a cost every time you click on check eligibility, but in this case I'd go ahead and check it because again, I got that little yellow yield sign that says that request didn't go through because it was missing this information here. Close out, and then again it minimized down at the bottom here my confirmation screen that I'm back to square one here and I can continue. You can hover over these icons, they'll give you more information, and you can also double click. So if I got a green check mark here that the patient is eligible for insurance at the time it was checked, if I double click, it'll open up a screen over here with more details about that eligibility confirmation that Advanced MD received back from the carrier. Also, you can double click on the red circle for insurance coverage that was unconfirmed. And when you double click on it, it'll give you a screen over here and give you more details. So in that unconfirmation screen, you'll be able to tell whether or not it really was a denial by the carrier or if it was just a glitch in the system and it didn't give us much information. In which case, again, I would call the insurance carrier to verify that the patient does have insurance coverage before we go ahead and see the patient. And that's the whole purpose of the confirmation here is to go, I'm calling Mr. Buck Rogers. I see that you're not eligible for coverage. Do you have a new insurance card? Or maybe we have the wrong insurance card or didn't type it into the system correctly. I can confirm that with him again with a double click on the carrier code, read it through with him over the phone. He can tell me back yes or no, or maybe he's got new insurance coverage. I mean, that's the whole point of confirming appointments. They can still be seen by the doctor, but they're not covered by their insurance, and then they will be billed directly unless they can provide another insurance card or an up-to-date insurance or to have them talk to their insurance. Okay, moving right along, we have the home phone number, the work phone number if they got any. If you can get that information from them, that's great. You can always, again, double click on the patient's name. It pulls you up in the patient's demographics, add those. Who they're saying, their main provider basically, and this is Dr. Green. Then any comments you want to make, any comments. And these comments are not only going to appear here, but they'll also appear. You click and drag this down here. When you hover over the appointment type, the comments will appear there as well. So in two places, here and also in your confirmation screen. And then when you're finished, you can click off in a blank area. And then finally, your confirmation method. How did you confirm this appointment? Go ahead and check the box. A little pop-up comes up and says, look, did you email, make a phone call? Did you actually speak with the person or with the patient to confirm the appointment? Go ahead and select one and click OK. And it does two things. First of all, it adds the confirmation method, and then when you hover over it, it actually gives you the user. You can see there it's me, and then if I hover over here, there it's not cut off. We've got the date and the time that I confirmed the appointment. So there we go. Now I can confirm appointments electronically and I don't have to print off pieces of paper, or I can get away from paper, and it'll keep track of all these confirmation methods. If I made a mistake and I accidentally checked on this or checked on that one, just uncheck it and I can undo the action and click OK. So now that patient is no longer confirmed for the appointment. And then when I'm finished, close out. As a side note, if you want to pull up a report for all those that were confirmed or not confirmed with eligibility, come up to the Reports menu, go down to Appointments, and then over and click on Appointment Confirmation Summary. And then come in here and either select a date range, either yesterday, last week, or the date range that I had, again, was March. And I'm just going to type in the numbers March 29th, 2007, and hit the Tab key. And then 03/29/2007, hit the Tab key. And then I can go ahead and click Generate. I can also check the box Auto Confirm Appointments, which means if I generate this, it's automatically going to confirm all the appointments, and I don't want to do that. So I'll leave that blank and just click Generate. And you can see here in this report, it's got whether they're eligible or not, whether it's confirmed, not confirmed, and of course, again, this office key doesn't have eligibility. But it does give me the time when it was last checked. I was able to fudge that in there, so. Next, the wait list. If a patient wants to be removed from the waiting list, you can click on the button, select the patient, and then click Edit. And of course, you can change them if they're desperate and they want to see any provider, but in this case, we want to remove them from the waiting list. We can click Remove. It'll ask us, do we want to add a reason for why they want to be removed? Maybe we can say like taking too long, and they don't want to wait 6 months. So we can click OK. Now we have nobody on the waiting list and it removed them. Now, this doesn't mean that they're removed from their original appointment. It just means that they don't want to be on the waiting list anymore. Now, if you remember, Arthur Spooner was scheduled on May 10th. So if I go over a month here, go to May 10th. There you go. You can see he's still scheduled, but he just said he didn't want to be on the waiting list anymore. So let me go back to today's date. Now, tied to the wait list, at least in theory here, and finally, is that when I cancel or delete a patient, they do a cancel or no-show, in its place, and you can look at tomorrow here on March the 30th, in its place we'll have a little hold slot that says check the wait list. Now this only happens in the future, and I want to cover this just a little bit more in detail because if you remember, you can set up in your system defaults, utilities to system defaults, and then over to appointments, a specific number that will say anytime you delete or cancel a patient within the number of days of 45 days, in its place it'll add a wait hold list. So I put 45, right? So we'll close out of here. And so what happened, and it only does it for the future here, if I left click on John Adams and I cancel him, that's within 45 days. So for example, today's March 29th, right? If I go back to December 1st and a patient calls in, December 1st of 2006, well, that's more than 45 days. That's about 90 days. If they cancel, that's not 45 days close to the actual date he's scheduled. So if I cancel him here, we're not going to have a wait list hold. But if I cancel John Adams now, left click, and I delete him, and I go OK, boom, in its place is a wait list hold time, which is prompting me, and again, this is optional, it's just basically prompting me to say, well, go to the wait list and schedule somebody here before you schedule anybody else, because, it's rude to schedule anybody else in this open time slot here than to go to the 50 or 100 people you have waiting in your wait list. So it's just a visual cue for you to go to the wait list and schedule everybody from there before you start scheduling any newcomers or people that want to be seen for the first time with the doctor. Now, you may not want to set yours out to 45 days, and you may just say, look, within 5 days of the appointment. So if I go out to April, and it's April 25th, I scheduled like Arthur Spooner. Let's say my waiting days is now just 5 days. If I set the system default to 5 days, then what's going to happen is if he calls in within 5 days, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if he calls within this 5 days here, and he cancels, and I delete it, there'll be a waiting list hold time. If he calls in on April 1st, that's not within 5 days. I won't get a waiting hold slot there, prompting me to pull from the waiting list to schedule and fill up that time slot that Arthur Spooner canceled. Now remember, you have your system defaults, which is 45 days, but you also have your defaults set up in the scheduler setup. So master files to appointments to scheduler setup. Now this is also in the scheduler setup training video, but I'm trying to tie it all together now because all I did in the scheduler setup was go over the numbers here, and I wanted you to actually see how it's affecting it, because you can actually select each calendar, and remember I have a calendar for Dr. Rice here, and I could say instead of using the default of 45 days, I can change it and say uncheck this and say 3 days or 5 days. So it just depends on which calendar that you want to set up for those default days. And by checking this box, it's referring to using the system defaults, what we just looked at, or you can uncheck it and just type in your own days, because each day for the doctor could be varying. It could be 5 days. You want to put a wait list there, or it could be 10 days. You decide. But this is where you want to change it at the basic level.